The first time I heard the tapping sound, it was just past midnight. I had just moved into the old house a week prior, a 1950s two-story nestled at the edge of a sleepy New Hampshire town. I wasn't the superstitious type, not at all. I worked in risk management for over 15 years. I was paid to think rationally, logically, to dismiss panic. But that night, sitting alone in my dimly lit living room, the sound echoed so clearly, so precisely. 3 taps, then silence. I turned off the TV and listened. Nothing. A minute passed. Then tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the ceiling, directly above me. I froze. The attic. I hadn't even been up there yet. Figuring it was some old house settling nonsense, or maybe even a squirrel, I brushed it off. Still, something about the rhythm of the tapping, it felt too deliberate, too human. But I laughed it off and headed to bed, telling myself it was nothing, just an old house with creaky bones. The next morning, over my black coffee and dry toast, I decided to check the attic. Just to be sure, the entrance was in the hallway ceiling, one of those pull-down ladders with a metal ring. I hadn't touched it since moving in. As I yanked it down, a rush of dry, cold air slid down the opening like a whisper. It smelled like old paper, dust, and something faintly sour. Still, I climbed up. The attic was wider than I expected, long and shadowed, with boxes stacked like tombstones along the walls. Everything was coated in decades of dust. But what caught my eye was the rocking chair. It was placed at the far end, facing the wall. And beside it, an old, black and white photograph nailed into the beam. It showed a woman with long hair, sitting in that same rocking chair. Her face was blurred, or maybe scratched out. I stared at it, feeling a cold tingle crawl up my back. I didn't know why I whispered, but I did. "Who are you?" That night, the tapping returned, but this time, I didn't just hear it, I felt it. The bed shook lightly beneath me with each sound. Tap, tap, tap. I shot up and grabbed the flashlight. This wasn't the wind. It wasn't a rodent. It felt like someone trying to get my attention. Against every better instinct, I went back up into the attic. The chair was rocking. I swear on everything. I didn't imagine it. It was moving slowly, like someone had just stood up from it. I stood frozen, flashlight beam trembling in my hand, catching dust particles in its path like floating ghosts. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft, right behind me. "Don't forget her." I spun around. Nothing, just the still, suffocating dark. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it might tear through my chest. I backed out of the attic, pulling the ladder up like I was sealing a tomb. The next day, I visited the town archives. I needed answers. The house, as it turned out, had belonged to a widow named Evelyn Moore. She disappeared in 1962, just vanished. The report said she was last seen sitting in her attic, grieving her only daughter who had drowned in the backyard pond. Her husband had hanged himself a year prior. The house was vacant for over a decade before it was quietly put on the market. My stomach turned. That photo, that rocking chair, that whisper. Was it her? Was she still up there grieving, trapped? I felt a strange blend of guilt and horror. I had invaded her space, and now she knew I was here. That night, I dreamed I was in the attic, only it wasn't dusty or old. It was restored, pristine. Evelyn was there, sitting in the chair, humming a lullaby. She turned to me and smiled. Her eyes were wide, too wide. "She's cold," she said. "She needs a blanket." I woke drenched in sweat, clutching my own blanket like a lifeline. The tapping didn't come that night, but the silence felt worse, like a breath being held, waiting to exhale. The next evening, I went to the backyard. There was a stone, almost hidden beneath moss and vines, near the pond. A child's name was carved into it, Lillian Moore. I knelt there, stunned. A toy doll lay nearby, half buried in mud. As I picked it up, I heard a soft giggle, not from the house, but from the attic window above. A pale face stared down at me. I packed a bag. I was done. I wanted out. But when I turned the key in the front door, it broke off. Just like that. I tried the back. Jammed. Windows nailed shut. My phone dead. Not just no signal. Dead. Blank screen. It was like the house knew I wanted to leave. The night fell fast. The lights flickered. I grabbed a candle and sat in the living room, trying not to fall apart. Then the attic ladder creaked, on its own, and slowly descended. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move. My legs felt like they were submerged in cement. My mind screamed, but no sound came. The candle flame dimmed as footsteps echoed above. Then, a soft voice. "She's awake." They came down the ladder together, Evelyn and the child. Their feet didn't touch the rungs. They hovered. Her face was clearer now, older, cracked like porcelain. The girl clutched the doll I found outside. They stood before me. Evelyn spoke, her voice dry and thin. "You see us now." You heard her cry. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't know." "You do now." The girl stepped forward. She took my hand. It felt like ice. I saw images, flashes, her drowning, Evelyn screaming, the rocking chair moving back and forth. The attic was their prison, and now I was part of it. I don't know how long it's been. Days, maybe weeks. Time feels strange here. People drive by the house, but no one stops. I've seen families look at it from the sidewalk, then turn away, uneased. The attic window is where I stand now, watching, waiting, tapping 3 times when the silence gets too loud, hoping someone will come up. Hoping someone will remember, because the house doesn't let go. It simply makes room. It started on a quiet Thursday morning in late September, one of those mornings where the world feels unnaturally still, like it's holding its breath. Leonard Marsh, a 48-year-old insurance adjuster from Des Moines, Iowa, never returned from his usual morning walk. He wasn't the type to vanish. He had a meticulous routine. Out by 6 a.m., back by 6:45 sharp, just in time for a pot of black coffee and the local news. But that day, the coffee sat cold, untouched. His wife, Carla, called his phone repeatedly. No answer. She walked the route he always took, past the Lutheran church, down Willow Street, through a small wooded trail known locally as Granger Path. Nothing, no sign of Leonard, just birdsong and dew on the grass. By 8 a.m, she'd called the police, her voice trembling. "My husband never misses his routine. Something's wrong. Please, you have to look for him." Authorities arrived quickly, knowing Leonard's reputation in the neighborhood. A quiet man, predictable, polite. Officers canvassed the area, and volunteers joined in. Search dogs sniffed at his last known location. They picked up his scent, but lost it inexplicably near an old bench deep in Granger Path. The dogs whined and circled. Something had interrupted the trail. By evening, helicopters buzzed overhead, their lights scanning the woods. The community held their breath. Carla sat outside their home, clutching Leonard's flannel jacket, the one he wore every morning. Her eyes were hollow, disbelief plastered across her face. He wouldn't leave me. He wouldn't just walk away. 2 days later, at exactly 3:17 a.m., Carla's phone rang, a number with no caller ID. She answered, half asleep, heart racing. A breath, just one, followed by static. Then a faint, broken whisper. "Carla, I'm still here." She screamed, waking the entire neighborhood. Police traced the call. It pinged from the cell tower closest to Granger Path. They swept the woods again, this time deeper. Still nothing, but Carla insisted, "That was him. I know my husband's voice." He sounded terrified. Detectives checked every street camera. Most showed nothing out of the ordinary, until they reached a bank's outdoor camera pointed near the end of Willow Street. At 6:28 a.m., Leonard appeared in frame. He walked as usual, coffee thermos in hand. But halfway through the footage, he stopped. He turned his head sharply to the left. No one else was visible. He looked confused. Then he took a step off the sidewalk and walked into the wooded area. Off his usual path, alone. The footage ended with him vanishing behind the trees. His expression lingered, startled, as if he'd seen someone he recognized. A week later, a man named Frank O'Malley came forward. Homeless, often ignored, he'd been living near Granger Path for months. He swore he saw Leonard that morning. He was talking to someone, but I only saw one person. Frank paused, trembling as he recalled. It looked like he was arguing with the air. I thought he'd lost his mind, but then he stopped moving. He just stood there. And then, honest to God, it looked like something pulled him backward, quick, like he'd been yanked into the trees. Investigators dug deeper and discovered Leonard wasn't the first. Over the past 15 years, 3 others had gone missing along Granger Path. Always early morning, always alone. Locals had chalked it up to coincidence, but now it felt like a pattern, especially when they learned each of the missing had received a late-night phone call just days before vanishing. Carla's face turned pale when she heard that. "He never told me about a phone call," she murmured. But maybe he had. Maybe he just didn't know what it meant. Cleaning out Leonard's study, Carla found something tucked behind the bookshelf. A journal. Pages yellowed, handwriting frantic. It wasn't like him to keep secrets, but these pages told another story. He wrote of dreams, recurring ones. A woman with no eyes standing on Granger Path, whispers in the woods. He'd begun hearing things during his walks. A voice calling his name. A shadow that moved without light. The last entry read, "If I follow it tomorrow, maybe I'll understand." The date matched the day he vanished. Detectives combed the woods again, this time with a psychic at Carla's insistence. The woman walked the trail slowly, eyes shut, murmuring. Then she stopped near the same bench where the dogs had lost Leonard's scent. She placed her hand on the mossy wood and whispered, He's not gone, but he's not here either. Something lured him, and it's still waiting. No one laughed. Even the toughest officers stood frozen. Weeks later, a cassette tape arrived at Carla's doorstep. No return address. The handwriting simply said, "For Carla." It was Leonard's voice, rushed, breathing heavily. "They tricked me. It wasn't her. It wore her fade, but it wasn't her. Don't go near the bench. Don't answer the phone at night. Promise me, Carla. Promise me." Then a sound, a deep, hollow inhalation like the forest itself was breathing. The tape ended. Granger Path is still there. Overgrown now. Locals avoid it. Some say you can hear footsteps beside yours, even when you're alone. Others report hearing phones ring where there's no signal, but no one walks there at dawn anymore. Carla moved away. She never remarried. Every year on September 22nd, she leaves a black thermos on the old bench. She doesn't stay. She never turns her back to the woods. "If I'm not back in 10 minutes, call someone. I'm serious this time." That was the last thing Darren texted his wife, Melissa. They had been driving through the forest roads outside Millfield, taking a detour from their vacation route when Darren insisted on stopping. "I just need to check that strange little trail. It won't take long," he'd said with a smirk. Melissa stayed in the car, engine running, heat on low. She watched the trees sway, checking the dashboard clock again. 10 minutes turned into 15, then 20. She stepped out, shouting his name. Nothing, just trees and a wind that suddenly felt too cold. When she finally called for help, her voice was trembling, and she knew, deep down, something had gone wrong, horribly wrong. By dusk, police lights flashed through the woods. Officers and a handful of locals joined the search with flashlights, dogs, and thermal drones. Melissa was wrapped in a blanket, standing beside the SUV, answering the same questions over and over. What direction did he walk? Did he seem upset? Had he been drinking? She repeated herself, panic in her voice growing each time. No, he was normal, curious, but normal. The trail Darren had taken was barely visible, a narrow, leaf-covered path that vanished between towering firs. No broken branches, no footprints. It was like the woods had swallowed him whole. Melissa noticed something else no one did. The trees near the trail looked slightly charred, as if something had burned their edges long ago. 2 days later, they found Darren's phone. It was lying face down beside a tree, still on airplane mode. There were no new messages, no calls, just that final text to Melissa. Forensics couldn't explain how it had no mud or moisture damage, despite the rainfall the night before. But what shook Melissa more was the recording, a 30-second voice memo. Darren's voice, but hurried, whispering, "There's someone else here, not human. I don't think they want me to leave. Tell Melissa I..." It cut off, not with static, with breathing, a deep, raspy inhale, as if something had leaned into the phone. That night, Melissa played the recording over and over. She began to notice faint background sounds, a ticking noise, like an old clock. And layered under Darren's voice, something else, a low, guttural murmur, repeating something unintelligible, almost rhythmic, almost like chanting. A retired park ranger named Elias heard about the case and contacted the local police. He asked to speak to Melissa directly. That trail wasn't a real one, he said. Some old search maps from the 1950s show that part of the forest is restricted. People vanished there. Same pattern. No tracks, no sign of struggle. Just gone. Elias showed her the faded map. There was a red X near the trailhead Darren had taken. In penciled handwriting it read, "Do not enter, lost 3. Melissa felt her legs go weak. She stared at the map like it might reveal some answer if she looked long enough, but all it gave her was dread. She begged Elias to tell her more. He hesitated before sharing stories passed between old rangers, that sometimes hikers spoke of a shifting place, a patch of woods that changed shape, where compasses spun wildly and time slipped. One guy said he spent 5 minutes inside, Elias said, but came out 3 hours later and he wasn't the same. She went back, alone. Against every warning and her own screaming instincts, she returned to the trail. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Her boots sank slightly into the moss as she followed what little of the path she could see. And then there was no path. Just trees. Trees that looked copied and pasted. Trees that somehow grew closer together when she wasn't looking. She turned to go back, only to find herself facing deeper woods. Panic seized her chest. She called out his name, tears filling her eyes. That's when she heard it, her own voice, echoing back to her, but not quite right. The voice repeated her words with an unnatural delay, as if trying to mimic her tone. Then silence again. She spun around. Every direction looked the same. A whisper floated past her right ear. Not words, just a breath. She ran. A clearing opened ahead. Circular, wrong. The trees surrounding it weren't moving with the wind. They were leaning in. At the center, a pile of jackets, shoes, and a single faded backpack. Darren's. Melissa stumbled forward, grabbing it. Inside, a note, not in his handwriting, just 3 words. He stayed willingly. Melissa dropped it, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the silence. Then footsteps, not from behind, from all sides. She turned, trying to see through the shadows. A figure emerged, her husband, but not quite him. He smiled, lips too wide, eyes glassy. "You came," he whispered. "Now we can both stay." He moved closer. Melissa backed away slowly, tears running down her face. "Darren, what happened to you?" she asked. His smile didn't change. Behind him, more shapes stepped from the trees. All human forms, some old, some new. Their movements were stiff, unnatural. Their eyes glowed faintly in the fading light. Melissa was never found. Her SUV was discovered a week later, keys still in the ignition, phone on the seat. Darren's case went cold again. The forest was closed off for environmental concerns. But hikers still talk about seeing a woman with wild eyes wandering between the trees, about hearing whispers that sound like someone calling their name. Some say that if you stand near the old trailhead at dusk, you'll hear breathing behind you, slow, heavy, like something waiting. And sometimes, people swear they hear 2 voices now, a man and a woman, whispering your name.